This is your host, Pete Moore, and I am pleased and humbled to announce the launch of my one and only book titled Time to Win Again, 50 Takeaways from Playing and Watching Team Sports to Guarantee Your Business Success. Those of you who know me personally, and anyone who listens to Halo Talks for any length of time, know that I am an avid sports fan and a big believer in the value of team sports. What I've seen over the past 25 years helping businesses grow, raising capital, being an entrepreneur myself, and coaching and mentoring executives in the sector, it's the lessons learned on the field perfectly apply to business. Entrepreneurs, executives, managers, you name it. Every company that's a strong company has got a good team. It's a quick read. There's awesome illustrations in there from our good friend Mark at Cruelty Free Cartoons. If you go to integritysq.com, enter your email address, and we will send you information on the book and the Entrepreneur's Survival Kit as well. Be great. Take names. Go Halo. This is Pete Moore at Halo Talks NYC. Today we are going to talk about pickleball and pickleball only. Lynn coming to us from Connecticut, who is an avid pickleballer, and she is going to wow us on pickleball being the future of outdoor racket sports. So welcome to the show.
It's great to be here. Thanks for having me.
Great. So you obviously come from a more professional and corporate environment, and now you're diving in headfirst into pickleball as a passion and a profession. So why don't you give us your personal background and tell us what kind of brought you to this life-changing point?
You know, it's interesting. Things began to change for me when I moved from Texas, where I'd lived for 25 years, to Connecticut. And moving from a southern climate to, having some pretty good winters, I was looking for something to do indoors. And I always had a racket sports background. I played, open level racquetball when I was young, and I wrote a lot of sports articles for magazines and whatnot. So I got to Connecticut and I'm looking for something to do in the winter. And I looked at the local recreation center and they had something called pickleball, which I had never heard of in my life. And, I know other people kind of might be there, but I looked it up on YouTube and I'm like, I know I'm going to love it. So what's great about pickleball is I show up to the gym just to check it out. And as soon as they see me peeking around the corner, looking, through the door, immediately somebody comes up to me and says, "Hey, you want to give it a try?" And I'm like, wow, these people are really welcoming. I mean, they don't know me from Adam. So got in the gym and somebody loaned me a paddle and I hit the ball a couple times. And from there, it was something I absolutely positively knew I was going to love. So pretty much maybe a month after I started the sport, I started the Pickleball Fire website, which is kind of morphed into a podcast and a digital magazine also.
Great. So I went to the U.S. Open of pickleball down in Naples, I guess it was about 4 years ago. And it felt like going to a tennis center, 30 years ago, where it was on a loudspeaker. And I felt like I was at camp also because they said, Murray Feinstein, please report to court 36 before you'll be disqualified for the over 80. So it seems like it spans age segments. But for those who haven't played pickleball, I've done some research on it. So it started back in, I guess, the 60s and 70s. And it was basically a couple of guys tinkering around with their badminton set and some wiffle balls and, kind of turned it into a global sport now. So, what kind of camaraderie or, how's your skill level and, how seriously are you taking your pickleballing?
Well, I learned a long time ago, I did play college sports and played high level racquetball, but, honestly, I do sports because I enjoy them. And if I wasn't on the court enjoying myself, I wouldn't be on there. And that's actually what's so great about it is that like you had mentioned, anybody can get on the court and play. It's not like tennis, which can be kind of difficult to learn. Mm-hmm. Regardless of, I've met so many people who have never played any other sport in their life. They get on the pickleball court, they can immediately hit the ball, they immediately have fun. And so you don't need to have a sports background or a racket sports background. And you mentioned kind of the intergenerational component. It's that I often see grandmothers showing up with their grandsons, and they both get on the court, and everybody can play together. I mean, even people who are very high level players are happy to take a beginner on the court, show them the game, give them some tips, and then play a couple games. So me personally, I love the sport. I'm somewhat decent at it because I've got that racket sports background. But yeah, it's just such a great game.
Awesome. And, from a standpoint of what you think pickleball can become, or kind of what inning, to use kind of a baseball term, where are we, and how do you see the professionalism of the industry? Or do you think this becomes like, in 5 years, we're going to kind of joke about this podcast so people didn't know about it, and now it's kind of on, NBC Sports, instead of Wimbledon Sunday, it's, Pickleball Sunday?
Well, yeah. I mean, actually, it already is on ESPN and CBS Network. That really just happened this year. Well, actually, the Nationals, that probably happened a couple of years ago. But in terms of an inning analogy, we're definitely in the top of the first. Honestly, in the 3 years I've been involved with pickleball, it's come such a long way, because in 2020, there was probably 3 million people playing the sport. There was no prize money for people playing in it. So even if you're at the highest level of the sport, these pros weren't earning any money. Now that changed in 2020, when actually not one, but 2 professional tours were launched. So of course, with the Olympics actually, just recently here finishing up, everybody's like, well, wants pickleball to become an Olympic sport, but there's a fair amount to that. But I personally know of a couple different organizations, people I've talked to on the podcast, that are working towards that goal. And it's not going to happen in 2024 because it's just too soon. They don't have enough prep time, we'll say, to even be an exhibition or demonstration sport. But by 2028, the LA Olympics, I do believe that that's probably everybody's goal, is to get it in by then. I mean, if you think about it, pickleball, in 2020, it grew about 20%. And granted, it's, as the New York Times called it, it's like the best, pandemic sport you could ever even imagine, because it's largely played outdoors. And
sure. An investor asked me a couple of years ago after we went to this event, where's, if you put kind of your business hat on, where is the money to be made? Because obviously you got a wiffle ball, and you got a paddle or a racket. I guess those are customizable to pickleball. But there's really not much else that you could, places to make money, in the space, in the recreation side. Do you see leagues popping up? Do you see maybe there's like a billing software, maybe what you're doing on the, the content and information side and data? Maybe that's where to play. Or have you seen any interesting, business channels that have started to evolve, or training, or what have you?
There's actually a ton of business channels. The biggest business channel at this point are the restaurant concepts, which are now involving pickleball. So they'll build, 4, 6, 8 pickleball courts as a part of that restaurant, so it's definitely more that lifestyle experience. And there's some, probably the best known one is called Chicken and Pickle, which is out of Kansas City. And they must have a half dozen locations, either with the restaurants now or in development, pretty much all over the country at this point. And there's other businesses similar to them. I mean, honestly, that type of concept is popping up all over the country. I mean, the development is just absolutely amazing. So that's definitely where the most money is.
Gotcha. And this Chicken and Pickle, do you know if that's a chain or if that's a franchise or?
Yeah. It's a small chain now. So
Gotcha.
I do believe they probably franchise.
I want to take a minute and tell our audience about two awesome workout recovery products I've been using for the last 18 months from higherdose.com, leader in infrared technology for athletes like all of us are. We're an investor in the company. That's not why I'm telling you this. I'm telling you this because it works. You got an infrared sauna blanket. I hop in there. I'll listen to some podcasts, burn 800 calories, get a mad detox. And a PEMF, which is a pulsed electromagnetic field crystal mat that I lay on and I recalibrate my cells to the normalized level of the earth. If you got somebody you like and you're looking for a pretty awesome gift, they will love it. You could use this code HALO75, get $75 off, and you will not be disappointed. higherdose.com, promo code HALO75. And now let's get back to our regularly scheduled program.
So from a standpoint of your personal lifestyle, how often do you play a week? Talk about some of the friends you made and, is it more recreational or is it getting even more and more competitive?
Because I've had a chance to play more often than I used to when I was working my full-time job, things are definitely getting more competitive. And sometimes I go out and play and I just want to have a fun match where I can work on some things. And then other times I'll go to like another park where I know it's very, very competitive when I'm like, okay, I'm confident, I can definitely get out there and compete. But, there's tons of tournaments, tons of leagues. Obviously, 2020 with COVID was a down year, but it's just huge in 2021. And there's a number of juniors programs coming up where you've got people who are developing the junior leagues, and there's always the tournament options too.
Gotcha. Interesting. So, with your background, did you play tennis before? Are you a ping pong player? What kind of got you into this?
I played a little bit of tennis growing up and kind of, some of the USTA leagues, but my real sport from a racket perspective was actually racquetball, which is definitely a dying sport, interestingly enough.
Mm-hmm.
One of the biggest differences between racquetball and pickleball is that there's really a very small percentage of women who played the sport of racquetball currently and historically. It's probably 80 to 90% men, where pickleball is a much more even mix. In fact, when I was playing yesterday, and probably right now I'm playing I practice probably a couple times a week, and then I play maybe 3 times a week. But yesterday when I went to the courts to play, it was probably 70% women. Now, I think the overall statistics are still a little bit more slanted towards men, but it's definitely something that, everybody can do. And one of the things that I think people always, when they hear the name of the sport pickleball, I've talked to people on my podcast who didn't even want to play the sport because of the name of it. Now, there's actually people who even said to me, I think that when I first started playing, the sport would do so much better if they got rid of the name and just replaced it with something else.
Right.
But now people have really kind of bought into the name and, kind of like the history of how all of that occurred.
Yeah, we worked with a group called Massage Envy. And after 200 locations, they said, should we try to change the name? And then they decided, it's just too late. Let's just try and support it and further explain that it's a massage clinic for everyone. So, as you look at, some of these over 55 communities, I know very well that Villages, which is probably one of the larger active lifestyle communities, has got a huge pickleball presence. How do you see, the older market kind of gravitating towards this? Do you think that there's any kind of injury issues, where do you kind of see this? Because this is probably one of the better sports, if you don't play golf, where, you can have a lot of community.
Yeah, absolutely. And, honestly, I think anybody who's building a community that's 55 and over now always has pickleball in it.
Yeah.
It's obviously you need a much smaller space than, like a golf course or something like that. So that's certainly a no-brainer. But yeah, I mean, I fit kind of right into that age group. And when I was 50, I completely tore my ACL and did not have it surgically repaired. So I really never thought I was going to play another court sport. But when I went and looked at, pickleball, I'm like, it's a much smaller court. It's actually a super fast game. It's much faster than tennis or racquetball, especially when you're kind of at that kitchen line. But it does not require as much movement. Now, granted, at competitive levels, the amount of movement that's required is tremendous. And the pro athletes now are, just the more athletic you are, the more you're going to do in the sport, because it's just changed so much just in the last couple of years. But on the over 55 side, with the older population, what's really common now too, is that they tend to combine RV parks and, people, driving their RV around the country with pickleball. So I know there's over 200 RV parks right now that actually do have pickleball courts. So that's a huge draw. As a matter of fact, I've got my sister-in-law's sister is actually going to be retiring soon. They're going to get in their RV and they're going to travel around from RV park to RV park to play pickleball.
Wow. Okay. I don't think I fully appreciated the inertia of this sport, and chicken and pickleball, and now RV parks and pickleball. So this is like the groundswell of what creates a real industry. Anything else that if you're a health club operator, and they're thinking about where they put pickleball courts in, maybe from can they still charge similar prices to what they charge for tennis courts, or, what have you seen there as kind of, maybe, is there a psychological price point, that says, oh, well, this is for pickleball, like I'm not playing tennis, or, what have you seen there?
Yeah, what I've seen with pickleball is most clubs, even tennis clubs here in Connecticut, they generally don't require a membership for pickleball. So it's basically drop-in type play, and people will just pay, $10. And some of the nicer dedicated facilities for pickleball, because there are now dedicated indoor facilities for pickleball throughout the country, those might charge a little bit more during prime hours, but prime hours in pickleball is actually pretty much during the day, interestingly enough.
Right.
But that's, again, the sport is, it's traditionally been an older population playing it, but I think that's another thing that's really changing. But pretty much, I had somebody on the podcast recently, and they said, if you're a tennis club and you don't have pickleball, you're losing money.
Yeah. That's a great point. The point about also actually having people come in at regular hours, whereas the max peak in your health club is usually, 6 to 9 a.m. and then, 5 to 9 p.m. So it's a great point for being able to level up your membership base and cater to the other people as well. So it's a great point. So, in starting up your own business here, any takeaways for our avid entrepreneurs here that are kind of grinding away, starting up new ventures and understanding that things take time?
I've been at this for 3 years, and honestly, even though I've been back and forth between being an entrepreneur and being in the corporate world, I did not start Pickleball Fire with the intention of having it morph into a business opportunity. I truly did it for the love of the sport. And that's why you actually see so many people in the sport. So, again, it's probably the first thing I've done as an entrepreneur that I have been passionate about. And it's certainly the first time that I've been a content creator. So it's just grown so much in this last year. I mean, just tremendously.
Yeah. So the answer on that turned into a business opportunity. Last part, just talking about, what you're doing on the podcast and what you're doing, on your site. Is there a really good pickleball court locator function that's on the internet or something that you're doing? And, who else do you see other, whether mall operators or, public parks, really starting to add pickleball going forward?
Well, you've definitely hit on all the right questions, because that was one of the things I put on my website early on, was a locator for both pickleball tournaments and pickleball courts. Mm-hmm. Now, the number of new pickleball courts going in throughout the U.S. is absolutely amazing. And one of the things that I do on my site is that I basically check the news every day for pickleball court openings, which there are many, many of, and immediately put them on my site, so people can have that opportunity to, certainly go find a place to play.
That's great. And then do you have any business quotes or personal quotes that are in your archives that you could share with our illustrious audience?
Yes, actually, it's interesting that I think this fits me, and it fits pickleball, the sport, so well. And this was actually a quote by Mike Singletary. He said, "Do you know what my favorite part of the game is?" And he said, "The opportunity to play." Mm-hmm. And I know that really fits me. And if depending on how old people are, he was a great Chicago Bears linebacker and also a coach. But I think that fits pickleball to a T. And yesterday I was having some difficulty on the court. I went through a really rough patch where I wasn't playing well. And I reminded myself with that quote of, why am I out here? It's the opportunity to play. Just enjoy the people, the friends, the weather, even though it was a little hot, so there we go.
All right. So for the love of the game, if you haven't heard about pickleball, you can't say you haven't heard after this Halo Talks. So get onto the court. Lynn, thanks for your contributions with keeping people outdoors and healthier, one person at a time. And look forward to comparing notes and getting you into our universe here of new pickleball openings along the way.
All right. Well, thanks so much. And be sure and check out, I also have a digital magazine, pickleballfire.com/magazine. It's really interviews from the podcast, but I write those up as articles. So there's a lot of great profiles of pros and instructional tips.
Perfect. Okay. You'll be hearing from our friends in Jersey very shortly.
Awesome.
Have a great week. Take care. Thank you.
Thanks.
Bye now.